They look great. I'm really pleased with how they handled the off season. We had a bunch of guys who were kind of role players last year that really just needed one more off season to change their body to become features of our defensive line. The probably the biggest thing that stands out to me is the maturity that I see in a lot of them that I didn't necessarily see, not entirely the whole time last year, but just they were building off of it in the fall, and now I'm seeing it consistently in the first however many days that we've been doing this. So I'm really excited about that. So the leadership combined with changing their bodies, I think we've got an opportunity to be pretty good.
Hey, Coach. Damian Sordelet with the news in advance. How has your group specifically handled all the uncertainty that's surrounding whether there'll be a college football season this fall or spring, and how are they progressing, and what's their mindset as they, hope to move forward and play here in about a month?
Well, the first thing was, all these workouts that we weren't allowed to be present at. So leading up to this point, and that was where that leadership kind of got forged because they're out there doing these workouts on their own. So they had to learn how to run the drills by themselves and things like that. And then moving forward, now that we're here and uncertainty, this, that, and the other, I mean, in my mind, we're practicing whether we're playing a game or not, so it's like Coach said, we have to take it a day at a time and win this moment. We're not getting ready for an opponent right now anyway. So we're just focusing on getting better at our fundamentals and doing our job, keeping our head down, if you will. Not that we're not acknowledging it, but to be honest, it wouldn't change how hard we got to go at practice, whether we're playing a game in a month or not. So we're out there and we're going to give the effort. That's our standard, and the standard won't change.
You're looking at the depth of the defensive line, and Coach Freeze was commenting earlier that this depth has greatly improved in the last year and a half. And can you speak to the level of depth you've been able to cultivate? And, a lot of guys on there, like a J.R. Sanders, Elijah Mitchell, guys who've been there for a while are now, like you said, now going to be featured guys in that defensive line rotation.
Yeah, J.I. is the first one that comes to mind. J.I. historically was a guy who struggled putting on weight, and he's up to 240 pounds now. Which is great for a guy who was so quick already. And then you look at Elijah James, who came in a little underweight to start. It took him the whole year to get his weight back. He's up to 300 now, and he's the prettiest dude on the yard. He's having a great couple days and a great off season. And then obviously Ralph already, and Austin Lewis, who was banged up a lot last year, that would have given us a lot of depth. He was one that we missed a lot. I think him being healthy is going to help a lot. And then you factor in all these freshmen we've brought in who are really good. I mean, they're really stinking good. I thought we had some good freshmen last year. We got just as good or better ones this year, just from a natural ability for 18-year-old kids. And so I could see all of them having a shot to play. I think that hurt us in some games last year. I mean, you look at Jesse Lemonnier, he was our best pass rusher, and we just couldn't afford to take him off the field no matter how tired he was. So, I think we'll have a little more quality by having depth out there, being able to rotate guys and things like that. And obviously you got Trayshawn Clark coming back, who had one of the better freshman years of anybody that's probably ever played here as defensive lineman. I'm really excited about our depth.
Coach, I think you maybe just said it right there, but I was going to ask you, losing Jesse Lemonnier, yeah, that's a big loss. But when you've got some guys that weren't healthy last year and able to contribute, I mean, in some ways with the depth, are you almost in a better position this year, even, to absorb a loss like that?
We're definitely in a better position collectively from a pass rush standpoint. It's probably a wash inside, but I think we're better inside. Depth is probably about the same. But from a pass rush standpoint, those are the guys that get worn out quick when you face teams that throw it 50 times a game. And now that we can put fresh legs out there, I mean, Jesse had however many sacks he had, 10 and a half or something like that. I mean, I would argue if he played less snaps, he'd have had even more. It was just we had no choice but to keep him in there. So I'm really excited about the collectiveness of this group.
You look at a All-American at the JUCO ranks and Darrell Johnson. How's he impressed so far? And a guy that could, with his length and his speed, could very well fill in there in Jesse's spot opposite of Trey Sean.
Well, a lot of pass rush ability is just things you're born with. He can roll out of bed and go pass rush for us right now. The things we're trying to teach him is, there's a lot more to football than just that. And he's one of those guys that had to change his body in the offseason. When he got here, he's about 220. He's over 240 now as well. So him and J-Odd are very similar players. He's got a little more length than him. Darrell has a little more length than J-Odd, but they're both similar style. So having him there is awesome. Both those freshman DNs, Steve and Akil, are real good natural pass rushers. Then you obviously already had Trey Sean, so you're talking about 5 really quick guys, and then more your powerful pass rushers in Austin and Rashad Whitehead and Carson Perkins and people like that. So I think we got plenty on the edge.
When you look inside, you have a guy in Henry Trabuzzi who you guys transitioned from offensive line to defensive line. How is he looking there inside as a guy who was already a big guy to begin with, and now you're probably working on his footwork and I guess his hands to try to help him out, inside as a pass rusher?
He's going to play with Ralph. So him and Ralph are playing that nose guard position, and Ralph's done a really good job of kind of teaching him some things. I've tried to take a little bit these first couple days. I've tried to take a little bit off Ralph because I know what Ralph can do and get Henry out there and get him ready. And I've been pleased with it. He's just got to play himself into shape a little bit. It's a little bit of more of a turn and run game when you play D line versus O line, and so that's what he's getting used to is more of the conditioning part of playing defense. But he's naturally strong. I mean, he might be one of the strongest guys on the team, and he's really explosive to be as heavy as he is. So I think, we got some large humans down there in the middle now. I mean, you talk about Ralph Rusens, who's 6'5", 320. Henry's like 6'3", 340. Will Green's 6'6", 320. Elijah James, 6'5", 300. I mean, we got some big dudes. So I'm pretty excited about the beef.
When you talk about that beef and a guy like Ralph specifically, who had 60 tackles last year at the nose guard position. I mean, what does that do for you? I mean, that sounds crazy to even say, but I mean, what kind of an advantage is that for you?
I think if you watch the tape, when he's making these tackles, it's a lot. He plays with a really high motor for such a big guy. That's what I tell my guys all the time. I think that's what stands out for him at the next level if he gets that opportunity, which I think he will. I think when you got a guy who plays hard, he can anticipate blocks and things like that. He's extremely intelligent. He's one of the smartest guys in the room. And that was without playing a ton of football. Football's still a new game to him. Just as he's progressed, I've been really pleased with how he not only leads the room, but just how he anticipates and makes plays just from his intelligence and his motor.
Hey, Coach, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
John Manson of CRA. Been going in and out a little bit. Just wanted to ask you about Trey Sean Clark, and you mentioned he had such a great season last year as a freshman, but he kind of takes more of a leadership role this year. What have you seen out of him since going back to last December when you guys won the Cure Bowl?
I've seen him change his body. He's continuing to get bigger. The big thing for Trey that I've told him is he's got to be the secret sauce, man. He's got to be the guy who can play multiple positions, because if Trey can play multiple positions, then these new guys can kind of form in line, and we can move Trey accordingly to fit how these new guys are progressing, you saw him play opposite of Jesse. He's going to have the opportunity to play what Jesse played last year to the boundary a little bit. He's going to play what he played to the field last year. So I think, and then anytime you can take a great player and move him in different positions, I think that gives you an opportunity to be better on defense, because they're obviously going to be keying in on him, or most people will be. But hopefully we've got enough of D linemen out there that they can't key on anybody. They're all the same. So, but yeah, that's what I've seen from Trey, is just his intelligence of the game. He's already been a great leader by example. He works hard when he's in the building. What I've told him is is being the leader when he's outside the building. He's always going to be going hard when he's here. It's him leading those guys out in the dorms and things like that.
There's a youngster on social media you raved about during the whole off season with how he carried himself, in Kendi Charles. And how's he looked so far? And do you expect him to maybe get some playing time as a freshman?
Yeah, I mean, Kendi was kind of a steal for us. He wasn't highly recruited just because he weighed about 245 when he was a junior. But the reason he weighed 245 was because he's a state power lifter and he was trying to stay underweight. And you see the kid, he could gain a lot of weight. He had big hips and things like that. And he's transitioned to a heavyweight going into his senior year, so he continued to gain his weight. So we got kind of a steal with him, because he's about 290 now in a good way. So he's playing 3 technique with Elijah James and Elisha Mitchell and Mason Walker and those guys. And, even at 18 years old, he's already one of the strongest guys on the team. So he's kind of like Ralph. Football's still really raw to him. He's only scratching the surface. So just a phenomenal kid. He's a very independent with how he works and things like that. You don't have to motivate him. So all those freshmen we signed, man, I thought we hit the nail on the head with athletic ability and their families and stuff like that. I'm really excited about all these freshmen and Darrell that we brought in.
How's Austin Lewis look so far? And do you expect to see his sack numbers go up a little more this year with just getting probably more opportunities?
Yeah, I think, from a stat standpoint, shoot, the guy didn't play that much, he dislocates his kneecap in the mock game, and then so he's out for however many weeks. He played the Syracuse game, but he wasn't full speed. And then he gets a concussion versus Rutgers, I think. So the guy just had some bad luck last year. So I really love his attitude. His deal is kind of like J.I. He always struggled putting on weight. He's got that huge frame. You'd love to see him get bigger, and he's almost 270 pounds now. So he I think will be much more powerful, and he'll have a real big role for us.
You mentioned a lot of the freshmen earlier, Akil, Rashad, those guys. Any one of those guys standing out to you as guys who are progressing a little bit faster than some of the other ones?
Akil and Steve have a lot of pass rush ability. Sings, those guys, kind of like I said about Darrell, they can roll out of bed and go rush the passer, and then just snap the ball, and they're going to get back there. Rashad is kind of the real savvy, intelligent one. You know what I mean? He's the one that picks up on things the quickest, probably. But the raw natural ability, you'll see it when you finally get to. Steven Sings and Akil Washington, their first step's pretty impressive. So I don't want to crown them anything just yet. They got a lot of work to do. We're out there doing underwear football right now. We don't have any pads on, so it's hard to evaluate my guys. But from a running standpoint, Steve, of the freshmen, Steve and Akil are pretty stinking quick.
Coach, maybe what's the difference this time last year as opposed to this time now, just coming in and having a whole year with these guys, a lot of them, and working with them now as opposed to, early fall camp last year?
I just felt like with the previous, group I had, we had some solid players that just hadn't been developed yet. You know what I mean? A credit to those guys that we had with embracing our culture. We went from, I think they hadn't had more than 18 sacks in however many years, and we had 35, which was like the most in like 18 years or something like that. And with all the same players, and that was mainly just because they embraced on how we wanted things done. Because it wasn't just my group; it was everybody on defense. And but we had a lot more one-trick ponies last year. They could only do certain things and stuff like that. And I think you'll notice the group we have now is very dynamic. Elijah James could play either inside spot or defensive end. A lot of our DNs could play 3, like Austin Lewis could play 3 technique if I really needed him to. Trayshawn Clark can play any position. Ralph can play either inside position. We didn't have many guys who were dynamic like that. So you look at who we're recruiting these frames, these big long bodies, and those guys can put on weight and play inside, play outside, and you're able to adjust week to week based on the team you're playing. You know what I'm saying? And that's what you got to have in college football, because you never know with injuries and who you're playing and things like that. And I just feel so much more confident in the pieces we have to move them and the intelligence they have. I think that's the difference. Their intelligence of football and understanding our system year one to year two.